So whatever you're more
Sure,
comfortable with.
sure, that's fine.
So thank you very much. Finally, you're here. I know you had some personal issue to handle, so you could not make
Yeah,
it there, but you had to be here. Like I told you, you have to be here because what you are going to bring in, it's very important. So, of course, the standard format to now is first I'll ask you to talk about the symposium, and then I'll ask you to talk about yourself if you're okay with that.
sure, absolutely.
If okay, because I like to hear people tell me about the symposium. I just new things come out to me. So please, what do you know about the symposium? Have you watched some sessions, whatever?
Well, I think I didn't get a chance to see any of the shows of the different presenters. I can certainly see from the list here that you had some distinguished speakers and certain some very wise mediators and experienced mediators, and just I'm sure it's just been a broad sort of discussion on dispute resolution around the world, across the globe. I think that you certainly have a lot of countries covered, and yeah, it looks phenomenal, quite
No,
honestly.
yeah, no, it's
So I
been
think
really
it's
nice.
important. I think that's important to talk about peace on a global level, especially in these challenging times right now, these dark times, if you will. There's been dark times in our history, as you know, and I think you know, we're sort of coming through some of that now. And it's been a couple of years with the pandemic, and I think it's had a huge impact globally on many different levels, from community level, mental health, addictions, and you know, domestic violence issues that have come out. Lots of really challenging issues that became very difficult for a lot of people around the world. So I think having this discussion, having your forum, having your symposium rather, is very timely. So very
Yeah,
thankful that I'm able to be a part of it.
no, really nice of you to be part of it. And interestingly, you will see Canada is very well represented.
Yay!
Which is good. That means in terms of indigenous people and dispute resolution and specifically mediation, there is a lot of activity happening there. But,
Yes.
because look, I mean, I find it interesting to obviously get parts from every part of the world, but the next one next year we'll have a much larger one because this time there was a conference happening which went on up till the end of there was June. We finished that, and then we had I think we still kind of started after that. Yeah, but we didn't get too much time to get people. So
Yes.
yeah, I think that needed to be done. But we may have a bigger one. I mean, if we do a next one, be a bigger one. But anyway, it's been nice. I think we need to get views from every corner because what happens is that here we're talking about mediation, but some people confuse it with arbitration, and then they say the indigenous communities are doing mediation. So we have to distinguish between the two. Someone said before Prem session, there was David. He was saying they basically decide. Prem is telling us there is consensus building in their community. So each community is doing things differently, and we don't want to paint them in one brush, which is
Right.
where what we really have to be careful about because like I said in two sessions, I mean David Shimoni's session and Prem session, we saw there were contrasting things which came out because
Right.
David was generally saying that the traditional in that traditional community they're deciding, which is not the case because if you were not here when Prem started his session, but it was of course about consensus building which he brought out, which was really
Mm.
nice, the fact that that is
Yes.
happening. So of course your view is going to be definitely very interesting. So David, it's all about you telling us about yourself and the topic, and I'll come in whenever you ask me to come in. So please.
Absolutely, and I'm certainly open to questions any time. Don't hesitate to to raise your hand, and I'm happy to take a minute to answer any questions. But thanks for having me, and it's a great honor to be here. My name is David Noganosh. That's my English name. My spirit name is Spotted Hawk in English. In Ojibwe, we say Gadak Se Geke. which means spotted hawk, but I'm also Mayingan Dodem, which is wolf clan. And that's really about family, it's about community, it's about defense. And the way I see it in this contemporary age, it's about, defending our culture and our way of life and our ways of knowing, our knowledge, and our teachings. So we've been through 500 years of colonization and oppression. And myself personally, I didn't, I knew I was Indigenous as a young teenager, but because of colonization and residential schools and the number of policies of government in the, in the past generations, in terms of assimilation policies, I lost, we lost our language, our culture, our identity. And so I had to make my way back through this time as a young man, Indigenous Anishinabek man, trying to find my way. In a sense, I was lost to to the history and to the impacts of those policies. So I knew I was Indigenous up until I was when I was a teenager, but I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know that there was such a thing as a spirit name, our clan, who we belong to, what our responsibility is to our nation, to our communities. So it's a little bit of I guess a challenging start, a different starting point from some folks. I'm sure a lot of Indigenous people in this country have very similar experiences. So yeah, I grew up in conflict, if you will, and so the conflict's been somewhat challenging as a young man, not knowing who I was and what I was about and what my responsibility was. I grew up with a single mom, and it was really challenging to I think for her to raise 5 children on her own and provide for food and shelter and so on. So you know it was a challenging upbringing, but as it turns out, here I am, 54, and I made my way back to the culture as in my late teens, early 20s. I started to reconnect to the culture, and when I came back, and I started seeking out knowledge and wisdom from the elders and from different teachers from different nations. I found who I was and my direction in life. And that doesn't mean that once you find that out and everything's going to be fine and good and roses and sunshine. It certainly gives you some foundation to build on to to address personal issues, personal concerns, personal issues. For example, addiction. I grew up in um, again, some challenging times, and I had addiction issues, and I think a lot of Indigenous people struggle with that. There's some truth to intergenerational trauma, and one of the things I learned in my early career was hurt plus fear equals anger, and that doesn't only apply to Indigenous people, but that applies to everyone. And so what happens is somewhere along the line, maybe you were hurt in some way, shape, or form, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and that caused you to move from your, from your heart to your mind, where the ego is. And so we've distanced ourselves from feeling and from emotional balance. And again, this is my own personal experience, my own personal opinion, and that since we've moved now to our head and where we think, we're we tend not to, to resolve conflict in a healthy way. So we see a lot of the impacts of colonization in our communities here in Canada, where a lot of Indigenous people are really hurt, really angry. And so I'm mediating in those communities a different type of approach. Now, what I do is a spiritual Indigenous dispute resolution. So I use what we call tools. We use the medicines that were given to us here in North America on Turtle Island, the tobacco, the sweetgrass, the sage, the cedar. Those are the four main medicines that we use for cleansing. A lot of Indigenous people use that across the country. We also have our ceremonies that we use in our processes, dispute resolution processes. And a lot of them are connected to what we call circle processes. And recently I had the honor of being a part of a training recently with a number of Indigenous people. And in the province of Ontario here in Canada, there's a new law that Anishinabek people have adopted and have taken control of our own self-determination, our own destiny, where we are taking control of child welfare services and implementing our own model of care for them to keep them out of the system. And as you know, and well, as I think many of the speakers may have alluded to, is that in our country, there's a lot of our kids are still, being adopted into mainstream societies, and that we're desperately, we have a responsibility, I should say, to keep our kids in our communities. And so with government policy, they say, you know what, yeah, we're we support you, but at the same time, there's we're experiencing a lot of systemic racism, systemic discrimination through our governments and our institutions. Don't get me wrong, it's the history is quite it's readily available on the internet if you want to find out what's going on in this country. But I can tell you the importance of having our kids in our communities are significant, because we want to see our nations grow and to be strong again. We have to, the focus is about the children. And our children need four things. They need love, kindness, compassion, and spirituality. And that spirituality, that element there is key for us. I didn't get my spirit name Spotted Hawk until I was 25. Again, because I didn't know what Indigenous culture was about. Many of our people have been, I've lost that language. I don't speak the language. I know a little bit. But I do know the culture and the ceremonies. Now that I've come full circle, if you will, to back home, to our original homelands. This is where we're from. These are where our ancestors have been living for hundreds of years, thousands of years, since time immemorial, they say. Another thing that is important to note is that our kids, that's what we're gonna need the children to be healthy and strong, for our nations to grow and thrive and flourish, our communities to thrive and flourish. But at the same time, we have to develop or reestablish our dispute resolution processes. And as I alluded to earlier with our circle processes, those are important mechanisms in our communities. And in Ontario, as I was going to mention, that we had many of our Indigenous nations, the Anishinabek Nation, more specifically, wanted a circle process as part of this child welfare law. And that basically incorporates traditional tools like the eagle feather, like a talking stick, a pipe, for example, a wagon, and the medicines, the traditional medicines that I had mentioned earlier. So those are important things for us to ensure that we're acknowledging the spiritual aspect of our conflict, and that we also have we're calling in spirits, our ancestors, come and help us, give us some guidance. And today when I woke up, I thought, I better put my tobacco down and say a little prayer, and that I bring a message to your symposium. That's important. And so what we do in our culture is we prepare spiritually for our conflicts and in many other things that we do. So we prepare spiritually for our negotiations with government. And so yeah, the significance of dispute resolution and spirituality, they go hand in hand in my perspective. And so one of the teachings that I got as a young man, as I started out my mediation career, and been doing this now for about since 2006. So I'm not very athletic, but I think it's around 14, 15, 16 years.
16, yeah, 16 years.
Yeah, there we go. So thank you. But so when I first started out, it really was in my early career, reconnecting and learning about how spirituality plays a significant role in the work that I do. And that I was given this responsibility, and it is a privilege to do this work. It's a responsibility, and it's part of what my contribution as a member of our nation can do. And I think that to reintroduce some of the ceremonial aspects of dispute resolution in our community and with our people in particular, can have profound and lasting impacts, positive impacts in their lives, in their personal lives, and in their professional lives as well. Yeah. But I wanted, where I was going with this was the tools are significant, and that we can connect with our spiritual guides, if you will. We all have a guide, a guardian angel, if you will. We all come with one. I have one, and I have spirit helpers here as well. You have them too. I have three: a hawk, a snapping turtle, and an otter, which are my spirit guides. And so yeah, it's to me, it's spiritual work. It's not, depending on, what type of mediation you do here in this country. It's commercial mediation, maybe it's more transactional. It's not necessarily, about maintaining or reconnecting to the culture, our relationships. So I do a lot more work with the communities. But a teaching I wanted to share with the group, and for anyone that watches the video later on, is the creator, in our belief system, in our worldview, is that creator is always teaching us something, and that we have to ask ourselves sometimes in conflict, what is this person or situation trying to teach me? And to recognize that, pride is the downfall, and openness is the key. And it's a good thing to be proud of who you are, be proud of your nation, be proud of your accomplishments, be proud of your family and your children. But let's not let pride get in the way of our working relationships in our communities, our relationships with our family. And I think we've all experienced, challenging times with our families and in our communities and our business relationships. So, we really have to take a moment to realize, okay, let's step back for a minute. Let me think about this. What am I being taught here? And sometimes, it's us that may have inadvertently said something, and maybe that was taken the wrong way. So it comes down to the drivers, the data or information. Maybe it's the wrong information you received that you were misinterpreted. Um, and maybe, I came across differently that day. Maybe I woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day. And, so conflict does present itself quite often, quite regularly. But I think that if you know that conflict was meant to be, I think at community level, and I'm troubled by seeing what's happening in Ukraine and in different parts of the world, and you know again the creators meant conflict to be. And so I think on some level it's meant to be, but I don't think on these horrible injustices happening in different parts of the world. Maybe they're more human driven, perhaps even more about greed and power, control. So I think there's that element too. But the creator is always teaching us, and the creator, you know, conflict was meant to be. So I just wanted to teach that piece. But also in our culture, we, the way I operate and I do my opening and I do a bit of teaching. That's part of my opening. There is I give that teaching, and I do my mediations, and I train in that way too. But also, I also talk about Mother Earth, Mashkeke Nagawe, which is which means Medicine Earth Mother. And so I'm Wolf Clan, and there's many other clans around the world and indigenous communities, and what they say is that Medicine Earth Mother, she is all colors and she's all clans. And so to me, I see us as a brother, sisterhood, human um, peoples, that are here to learn. In our culture, we say that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that, I've learned so much about what's going on in the world. I try and take in as much as I can. But at the same time, I know my work is the creator had brought me here to do this work. So I made a couple notes here. Let me just make sure I'm touching on them.
But can I comment for a second?
Yes, please.
Because I'm really happy that you're talking about the spirituality aspect, because this is what I've been talking about. And I did a symposium in April on heart, soul, spirituality, and mediation. So next one, you have to be part of that one for sure.
All right, I will.
On the effects of colonization, there's one in September which starts on 15 September. You have to be part of that. That's colonization, decolonization, and mediation. So David, you have to give me a lot of time. So
I will. I will do what I can for sure. Thanks for that.
But let me also, before you go further, let me just say Trina has put a message saying that proud to be associated with David.
Trina.
Trina
Okay. Yes.
Railkoff.
Okay. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Trina. I got to reach out. So yes, I'm doing work across the country in different capacities, and I with the mediation. Some of our communities, they don't like the term because there's this legal connotation to it. And so I have two different type of forms that I use. One is red wolf mediation, mediation agreements. I also have another form that's called Ogichida, which means big heart, big spirit in our language. And so in our communities, in history, and even now to this day, we have Ogichida, the big heart, big spirit people in our communities. And the beauty of this is that you can go to any First Nation community, there's going to be somebody there that is, has that big heart and big spirit, and they're the ones that will help the elders. They're the one who go shovel the driveways in the wintertime, making sure they have food, making sure they have things they need. They go way out of their way to support individuals maybe that are sick or not feeling well. So I call it Ogichida circle facilitation. And that kind of reinforces our culture, our language, and our way of life. And so it's part of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure, even though there's elements of mediation in my work, active listening and open-ended questioning, probing, different types of techniques that contemporary mediators use, mainstream mediators use. I'm also trying to make sure that our culture, our languages, and our ceremonies are coming back and people will learn them. So I have an opportunity always to teach. And one of the things that I can share that really will sort of paint the picture of why this work is necessary is I was part of a restorative justice process some time ago, and I won't forget it. And this young lady had attempted suicide. She had slit her wrists. Um, and she had come, the police were called and her child was taken into care. So we came to the circle to help her along and help understand, what was going on in her life at the time. And so I asked her, quite frankly, I said, can you tell me a little bit about what you were thinking, what was happening for you at the time? And she said, I wanted to go home, but I didn't know where that was. And to me, broke my heart. I'm like, oh my God, this is, a young lady trying to raise a child on her own, struggling with addiction, and trying to do the best she can. But she didn't know where her culture. She didn't know nothing about her culture. She didn't know nothing about her language. She didn't really know anything about who she was, her identity. And so there's healing that has to happen. And as part of the work that I do is I bring in some of that. I don't do it myself, but I'm sort of the conduit to bringing in that healing through the ceremony. I might be in a sweat lodge, a couple, prior to a conflict, prior to a mediation, prior to a circle. I call them circle mediations. I can do mediations simply, but I incorporate traditional processes as much as I can. So, if we look at our sweat lodge ceremony, for people that aren't familiar with it, there's a lot of information on the web about it. We have this ceremony that was given to us for healing and for connection. So in the lodge, it's like we're crawling into the lodge, we're crawling back into our mother's womb. And that's what it symbolizes is, the mother's womb. And so we're in there and it's a very profound experience. I had been, I had been sexually abused as a young child and I was healed in that sweat lodge ceremony. So the significance of the ceremony, of the sweat lodge ceremony is profound and it's always going to be there for us. We're so fortunate to have that in our communities. And it takes a little while to make your way back there. But once you start going back and, you go to the lodges and it's not, you'll never, I was healed in there. I'm not 100% healed. I still get angry and I still have frustrations and, I still, have my own personal challenges in my life. But certainly having that connection to our sweat lodge ceremony is super important. And we're lucky to have that. But we can do, my friend does sweat lodge ceremonies and she does family dispute resolution in the sweat lodge, in her lodge. And it's a different approach and it's very timely, takes a little bit of time, but it can be, excuse me, it is, it's a very effective approach, because we're, you know, we allow, what I was going to say earlier was, I'm the conduit, but it's the spirits that do the work. You know, I can bring people, you know, I can put do my ceremony, I can smoke my pipe and say, look, I need some direction here. You know, how can I help the people? What do they need to hear? What do they need to learn? How can I, you know, what can I share with them? And it really is about the teachings. It's really about making that connection for me, because I know 500 years of colonization and oppression and genocide in this country, our people need healing. And we got a long way to go, but we're, you know, I've seen significant milestones in different ways across our country, certainly with even myself having the ability to do this work. As you know, it's been such an honor and a privilege to do it. If I can talk a little bit about the, you know, the different models, you know, that I've seen, I've witnessed. There's many different ways they say back to the creator. So around the world, we know there's, you know, peaceful approaches, peace builders, lots of really good people out there like yourselves. And, you know, we're out here doing important work, and it's so significant that you know, we've been given this responsibility, and that we're going to do the best we can. And you know, I try to, you know, pace myself. I know there's a lot of work to be done. I don't want to be burnt out, and I don't want to be exhausted. I know, because there's so much that has to happen out there. And so yes, there's a number of different ways. I've seen different approaches. Different communities will do different things here in Ontario, and I'm sure you've probably heard some of the different models that are out there. I've created my own model based on the 7 grandfather teachings that we have. And one of the first teachings is love. In some communities, it's not the first, it might be the second. One of the 7 grandfather teachings is love. And what symbolizes love is the eagle, the North American bald eagle, who is the go-between between the creator and the peoples. And so when we offer our tobacco in a sacred way, in a ceremonial way, we always make that connection. We say, you know, Migize, you know, carry this message to the creator. And the eagle, as mediator, has to be focused, has to be calm, you know, has a big job to do. And before he took on the responsibility of this work, he became, you know, he had his own faults, like we all do, right? So I came into this work as a young man, still with my own personal challenges and struggles, but you know, I worked hard to become who I am today, and I'm very confident in my work, and I'm very humbled that I've been given this opportunity to work with communities. And I tell people that because, you know, I tell them, I say, look, you know, I'm very honored to be here because, you know, in this short time, you allow me to be in your life, and I can, you know, I'm able to do some, offer you support, offer you healing, and so on. So the eagle as mediator, you know, we sometimes think the creator is not, you know, the creator is not kind. You're not hearing our prayers, or you're not hearing us. And so sometimes we come with negativity. We'll come with you know, not very kind thoughts. And so the media, or the eagle, reframes that and never takes a negative message to the creator. You take the positive, you know, he'll reframe the message from myself, for example. And if I think of, if I'm thinking negatively, we'll reframe it to the creator in a way that the creator will, appreciate and understand. So we know that that's a big part of our messages and the way that we can connect to healing. And we put our tobacco down. That answer might not come tomorrow. It might not come next week, but it will come. You have to have that faith. And I think that's where I like to think that I'm also I talk about the 3 A's in my work: awareness, acceptance, and action. Awareness of who we are, we have become, colonized people, oppressed people. I grew up in these challenging circumstances. Yeah, that's true, right? Absolutely bang on. I was incarcerated as a young man. But, the awareness of that life, I need to accept. So I move from awareness to acceptance. Acceptance that I cannot change the past, but I can change how I feel about it. And so, I look back and I say, my mom was amazing. She's been gone 30 years now. I look back and I say, oh my God, man, I was really lucky to have everything I had. It wasn't much, but it was, really, really something to go through, and it's challenging for sure. So the acceptance, and then the action. Okay, so now that I'm, I understand who I am, what I'm all about, where I'm at right now in this, why I'm so angry, or why I got, so much frustration. I'm not able to communicate, very effectively. Indigenous people in this country have been muzzled for far too long. And so we have a hard time articulating, good words sometimes, and being open to constructive feedback, that type of thing. So, but the action piece, I might need to get counseling. I might need to go to the sweat lodge. I might need to go see a traditional healer. And thank God, thank the creator that we have traditional healers. They've been, they're alive and well, and they do amazing work. And I've worked with many over the decades. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be. But I want to talk the people that supported me, that mentored me, were from other nations. The Cayuga Nation, one of the 6 nations, the Oneida Nation, my dear friend and mentor, Reva Jewell, she's moved on to the spirit world years ago. And I'm Anishinabek and Ojibwe. But they were always very supportive. And so that's what we need to do. That's a great example of how we need to work together. And it doesn't matter, we have to look beyond, the physical. We have to look beyond our skin color. We have to look beyond the way we act, the way we, conduct ourselves, and try and, support people who need support. And, it's at the end of the day, what do we all want? And I talk about this too in the work I do. At the end of the day, many people want this in the world globally is peace and harmony. And that's where the spiritual piece comes in for me, is that I know that there's 4 spirits, 4 elements to us, 4 elements in the world that are significant. But in terms of spirituality, we have the mind, it's a separate grandfather. We have the spirit. We have the innocent one and the warrior. So we have 4. That's the way I was taught. And, if we didn't have one, we would slump down to the ground. And sometimes I in my early youth, and when I've had to defend myself from, attackers and, people who, were trying to bring harm to me. I don't know where it came from, but I can tell you, that warrior spirit will come out, and I will defend my honor and my family's honor. And I've had to do that many times. And I don't like that, but it's there. And I just don't know what comes over me. But I will defend my family and defend the culture and the ceremonies. So again, there's that element, that we live in this world. We're here to experience as much as we can, to learn as much as we can. Again, we're always being taught something. Um, my kids, I think, as I was alluding to earlier, Red Wolf Mediation, that's my son's spirit name. Red Wolf, sorry. Mushkwe Maingen. And they got their names when they were 5. I took them to the healer to get their spirit names. And so we're seeing this across the country. We're seeing a lot more people coming back to their culture, coming back to their ways. And, historically people, and there's some people in our communities, and that's okay. As I mentioned earlier, there's many ways back to the Creator. Some of our Indigenous people are religious and, have adopted other religions and other way practicing, different ways of connecting to the Creator. And that's not a bad thing. But the thing is that I think in the history books tell us that, they think that our ways were pagan. They were just the ways of the devil. They were, we were savages living off the land. And quite honestly, that was far from that. We were far from that. We were the original stewards of the land. We were connected to the land, to the Sabe. In the English term is Bigfoot. We call them Gitchi Sabe. And we know that spirit is real. I've talked to many young healers or people that have seen and know about this spirit, the one who stands beyond the trees. And so we're there. It could be one tree in downtown Edmonton, and the Sabe could be there. So they're there. We know they're one of the first peoples that came to this earth. And so, there's other elements to this. And so there's a reason why that we have these teachings, in particular love. And, with the Sabe, that's about honesty. Sabe is about honesty. And in dispute resolution, how important is it to talk about honesty? How important is it to be honest? Not only with yourself, right? But to be honest with others, open and honest. And I can tell you a quick story before we end up here. But
we're not going to end soon, David. Don't think I'm going to keep you and I have to take a lot of information from you. But what we'll do is we'll just say bye to Prem. Prem is leaving, and
Prem,
he's a lucky person because he's from Nepal, lives in Thailand, both the countries not affected by colonization. So
wonderful.
their dispute resolution systems are still that consensus building system. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you, Prem, for being part of the symposium.
Thank you very much, Vikram and David. Thank you very much, and nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet
And
you.
I think at some point of time, Prem, and we will also, I think, David, on these aspects about the spirit and, like you said, the tree and all, Nepal has a lot of that culture which will still exists. I mean, of course, for various parts of India also, but these aspects in Nepal, there are a lot of things. So we'll have some session where we'll get all this together, because I'll tell you when we're going to do that. We'll put something together. I'll talk about it later. So thank you, Prem.
Thank you. Sounds interesting.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Miigwech. So the story I wanted to share quickly was a story of my experience in a sweat lodge in Northern Ontario, Northeastern Ontario. And I was there with a couple of friends and this conductor. They always have a conductor that facilitates the sweat lodge. And this conductor was a healer. And he says, I'm going to pass this hand drum around. I'm going to pass this hand drum around. I want you to tell me what you see in this drum. And I'm sitting there, I'm way on the other side. I'm thinking, I'm not going to see nothing. I didn't really have that faith. And I'm thinking to myself, I ain't going to see anything. So he passes it to my friend, and she says, oh, I see this. She passes it to her partner. He says, oh, I see this. I'm like, I'm still thinking to myself, I'm not going to see anything, even after I just witnessed what they just said. And so it comes to me, and I held onto it. I'm on the earth, I'm in the lodge, and I look at it, and I see a buffalo head at the very bottom of this drum, hand drum. And it was a dark silhouette, but I could tell it was a buffalo. And so I said, I see a buffalo. And it was so profound. I just passed it on. I said, I saw a buffalo. And I looked like that silhouette moved slightly. And I was like, okay, this is really profound. And so I went to see the healer about that some years later. And he said, Dave, I'll simplify it for you. It means it's a symbol of respect. It's the 7 grandfather teachings there. Again, so the 7 grandfather teachings in dispute resolution apply, and I can use them in a way that I can say, look, here's our 7 grandfather teachings: love, humility, respect, bravery. What are some of the things what resonates with you when I put these up on this flip chart, the 7 grandfather teachings here? What resonates with you today? So, it really is a helpful tool for me in the work that I do, that people make that connection and can use it as a guide to say, okay, I just want to be honest about this and how you communicated to me. And it sometimes, because of this, again, as I was telling you earlier about the indigenous hurt and pain, what they call trauma informed practices now. And it's important to know this as lawyers, as adjudicators, legal profession, and people all in the broad spectrum of the legal field. So important to know where people are coming from and how they can be supportive and inclusive to addressing conflict and to allowing the people to bring out those feelings and to have that dialogue. And so I see it, as an opportunity for people to focus on something and say, look, there's a 7 grandfather teachings. I want to talk about bravery. You were very brave to bring this up. How challenging is it for some people, especially our young people in particular, to come forward and say, you know what, I have a concern and I need to speak to you about it. They teach courses on this, having difficult conversations, how to have a difficult conversation. So, so this model, indigenous way of knowing, we were not given a church, we were given a way of life. So I look upon, every day I look at the sky and I look at the earth and the clouds. There's a teaching for you here, and it's free of charge. The clouds do not discriminate. So wherever the clouds may be, they do not discriminate. And that's because we're all under one sky. We're all human family here. Okay? Doesn't matter. We've got to look beyond, all of that. all the nationhood, all our differences. Let's look beyond that for peace, and let peace surround you, when it can. And so, when you will let it, we have to we come to a place. I think I'm at a place in my life now where I can say, I'm at peace. I've been through hell. I've been to hell and back, so to speak. And that's probably a poor example, but I found peace in my Creator. I found peace in the work I do. I keep on doing what I can to rebuild Indigenous nations, Indigenous communities, give them the tools, new tools. We're moving forward in leaps and bounds in this country and the communities. But we have to move forward also. We have to have tools necessary to address conflict when it does arise. And so we've always had these tools. We've always had approaches through culture, through ceremony, through circles, through council fires, through gatherings and negotiations. And again, a lot of it was ceremonial. A lot of it was through tobacco, our number one medicine that activates all medicines. And when we use that tobacco in an important, sacred way, big things can happen, and changes will occur. And for example, I when I started my business, I saw a traditional healer. He said, Dave, I want you to go. The spirits want you to go out to the water, up to your knees, and they want you to bring a birch bark plate. And on the plate, you're going to make an offering of some food and your tobacco and $5 in dimes. And that's good. I want you to offer that. And I want you to think about your business and how, what you want to do, and, some of the things that you hope to achieve. And that was about prosperity. So I connected to the spirits in the water. I made that offering, and I took a muffin, which was very, not hard to get nowadays. I had one this morning, as a matter of fact. And I made the offering to the spirits in the water. And my business blossomed from that. And so, I don't know where the calls came from or how they got connected. I didn't even ask. I just said, okay, well, here it is, right? So there is a spiritual element to business in the work that I've done as well. And that brought me to where I am today. I've been fortunate enough to provide for my family, my friends, and my community. I'm very thankful for that. So yeah, I wanted to talk, just to share a story about the significance of forgiveness. And if you look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in Canada, and some of the community discussions and the public forums that have occurred across the country, some of the women that came forward that were abused in residential schools had the strength to forgive. And so we need to do more of that, and there's a way to do it. I learned through traditional healer Geraldine Stand-Up from Six Nations again. She told me that to put our tobacco down and learn how to forgive, and say, I forgive this person for what they did, even if you don't agree. Because if we don't do that, we carry this energy like baggage, like luggage, and it's here, it's on our shoulders. So we're, it's a heavy load sometimes. We can't let go of these things sooner than later. And so one of the that was shared with me recently, and I'm incorporating this into my work now more than ever, is the story of Wanabujo, and that this spirit, one of the first spirits that came to the earth, the Creator sent down, was given a responsibility to name things, to name the plants and the trees and the rocks and waters and so on. And as he traveled, naming everything, you know, it was a big responsibility. But he was troubled. And the reason he was troubled was because his father had abandoned him. And, you know, his father was a thunder being and was from the West. And so as he traveled, he went to find his father, sought, you know, some justice, and he finally caught his father, saw his father in the mountains, and began to quarrel. And so they fought for many, many days. And finally, Wanabujo had his father, had him down on the ground, and was just about to strike him. And he decided, no, this is not the way. And that was the first time in this physical realm that there was forgiveness. And so we, you know, it's a story that was told to me. It's a lot longer, but I wanted to share that piece with you. So I try to, at the end of my sessions, my mediation sessions, I'll take a tobacco tie, which is a tie of red cloth generally. It's a cloth with the tobacco in it, and I share this teaching on forgiveness. And even if you don't agree, we can let this go today, and we can move on with our lives. And that'll, you know, the more you can do that in your life, the more peace you will have. And that's where, you know, that's where we need to be. It comes down to that. The spirit is about peace. The spirit is about gentleness. And so for us, that's where we need to be. And it's a hard place to get to, but we can make it. A little bit of support. So I just want to say thank you very much, Miigwech. Miigwech for having me.
Well, thank you very much. It's not that you're going to end this session right now. We are going to, because there is so much that you have to tell us, all these wonderful teachings that you have, because a lot of these things, I think you assume that, okay, this should be part of everyone's life. And then you find out they're not. Because look, I come from a country where there is so much available to us. There are, of course, wonderful teachings, and these are available to everyone, and it's a way of life. Like you said, it's a way of life for people. And we assume a lot of those things, and then you find out in some parts of the world, this is, just to hear these things is wonderful for them. So that's why you have to take us through a lot of these aspects of course, in relation to mediation, the models and processes and everything. If you have time, whatever, as much time as you have, because we have enough time for you because of the fact that there is no session after you, so we can. But let me just, a bit on the aspect of the, what I'm trying to put together, the World Mediation Circle, and in that there will be circles in every community. One circle that I'm going to be creating is the Indigenous Peoples Mediation Circle, and you have to be part of that. And we'll bring in people from all over the world, and we'll share experiences and teachings and all, and we'll find out there are lots of similarities, and the teachings are similar, the concepts are similar, and let's put it all together. Because yesterday a very nice terminology came out. There is Giselle from Peru was there, and she used the terminology original dispute resolution. I really like that.
Yeah.
So let's work on an original dispute resolution, call it a model, whatever we have to call it. Let's put that together. And look, there is going to be colonization of traditional methodology of dispute resolution. There will be. I hear people start talking about it. There was someone before Prem talking about the modern mediator and the traditional mediator, and we should not let those concepts come in. Even this whole interest-based aspect is spoken about a lot. Why does it have to be interest based? The values based, the humanistic approach, heart, soul, spirituality playing a role. So let's not let that go only because someone at some stage wrote some book coming from a culture where maybe these things were not looked at. I mean, so let's not let that come in because everyone thinks, oh, we will bring this into the whole traditional method of dispute resolution. Please don't. Let us identify, let at least us bring together this together, and then we will see what we need to bring in. Is anything required to be brought in at all? So let's take it slowly. I mean, I'm seeing that there is some I don't know whether it's really I mean something which people understand what they're doing, because colonization people don't understand. For me, this is colonization of a certain original dispute resolution. I'm going to start using that terminology. So that part of it. But please, you take us to as much as you can, because seven grandfather teachings, of course, very important. I think Jim was there. He did speak about, he had a presentation which he did take that up. I don't know whether you know Jim or not.
Yes,
He's So you know him. So
a little bit.
no, he was really nice. He gave a proper presentation, and of course, talking about what he's gone through personally also. So those
Mm.
things, of course, you share with him on that, because I think we need to bring out this aspect of how you have now, because you've gone back to a system, you're looking at it differently. Because I mean, something which is you born in, brought up in, sometimes you don't maybe pick up a lot of things, but now that you're looking into it and getting involved in a culture, I think you'll pick up a lot more, and you will be able to tell us a lot more.
If I can, sure. There's a couple of things that just came to mind as we were talking briefly. I was listening to you rather, and when I went to see, a lot of my experience, a lot of my knowledge, it's come from traditional healers. And so again, they're the conduit between the spirit world and the physical realm here. And so we know there's two realities in our culture: physical reality, knock on wood, but there's the spiritual element. And so when I went to talk to the healer about my business model and the Ogichida model that I was talking about earlier, he smoked his pipe, and he said his prayers to the spirits, and he came back and he says, Dave, for you, it's about the instructions that come from your spirit. And so in conflict, as a mediator, I need to go in deep. And a spiritual journey is a journey within. And so it might sound a bit strange, but I find, if, for example, in one case I can give you, I was mediating and, doing some work, and I wanted to touch that experience, feel it. So I tried to make the connection in the mediation to my spirit, and to hear about the instruction. What's the instruction? And so I took a minute to myself and I asked that question. Okay, what can I do? And the spirit inside inside me said, slow down. And because I've been the type of person that I want to get in there and get it done fast. And so I'm thinking about resolution. I'm trying to make sure I get everybody's stories out. Um, but I took a moment to listen to my spirit. My spirit said, slow down. And it wasn't like, slow down. It was, I could feel it. Slow down. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to slow down. And I did slow down. And you know what? I can tell you, my work was much more thorough. It was, I was certainly more focused, and it was really a good session. And so even before I start my sessions, I put my tobacco down. I pray for a good outcome. I ask for a good outcome on the day of. I'll say, Creator, can you help me, guide me, Spirit, Mashomas, Nokomis, grandmothers, grandfathers, just give me some direction, and I pray for a good outcome. And usually that good outcome happens. And I think because I've, over the years, have practiced or relearned how to do these things to make that connection. So yeah, that's an element of the work we do as original dispute resolution, right? And we're going back in hundreds of years ago when that's how we did things. And it was unfortunate that I think what happened in history was the RCMP, the police, the national police at the time would come to Indigenous communities, and they would take these spiritual tools, take our pipes and take our, the things that we made the connection to the spirit with, and would destroy them to break that connection. And so there's been a lot of disconnect, and a lot of knowledge, a lot of teachings that were lost along the way, but they didn't, they couldn't take away our spirit. And so we're a strong, we're resilient people, Indigenous people, and we've come a long way, and we're going to make it. We're going to come back to where our nations are strong again, and our children will be there. And I'm excited, and I'm comforted to know that. And there was also a significant piece that I should talk about, because for those that are listening in Canada, and elsewhere, of course, but what's significant to me, and I'll be sharing this in a provincial forum in the next couple of weeks, as I'm putting together my thoughts on this talk, I know that what was shared with me years ago through a traditional healer, a message came from a spirit through her to me. And they said, Dave, you must change the name of land claims we must change the name of land claims to land interests, because we all have an interest in the land. So if you look at Canada and its multiculturalism and the many different peoples from around the world that have come here that are populating our lands, it's a tough thing to grasp, I think, for Indigenous people, because we have an inherent right, we have a treaty rights to our territories. These are our lands. We're all treaty people in this country. But the message was about coming together as peoples, regardless of your skin color. We need to let the people know that Indigenous people have a way forward. There's brilliant Indigenous people out there, and we're working hard to make the country a better place. And if we can think outside the box, that if we shift our thinking, our government negotiations from, I know there's always competing interests, I understand that, but to have the philosophy is that if we work together in a collaborative way, in a honest and a humble way, and to put our pride aside, we can achieve incredible things in much healthier relationships. We can deal with address discrimination, address racism, address the inequities in our societies, by small steps like this. That if we look at we changed the name from land claims to land interest, right from the get-go, it shifts it from an adversarial discussion to, okay, how can we make this country a better place? How can we address the water crisis? How can we address the, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this country? How do we work together to find justice? And our sweetgrass, one of our medicines, is about gentle justice. I think we have to find a way to have gentle justice. Certainly, there's other things that sort of can drive us towards. We have to hold people accountable. In our communities, we have our own inherent right by the Creator to hold our own people accountable for actions, for things that were done. We don't need the mainstream justice. There's good things in there, but certainly, I think we have the abilities and the knowledge and the know-how and the expertise to have our own justice system in this country that is more reflective of Indigenous peoples and our way of holding our own people accountable. It's not through jails, it's not through punitive measures, it's through love and kindness and support. And another thing I should share is that a lot of our people haven't had an opportunity to tell their story. So there's a lot of this pain, a lot of the hurt, and we got to sit down more. Like every time I do a mediation, I do my case development or assessment, that's the opportunity for me to begin some of this healing work. Tell me a little bit about who you are. Where are you from? And okay, you made sounds like you made some accomplishments there. And of course, they talk about being 100% neutral or impartial, and that's hard to do as an indigenous mediator here in Canada, because I love my people. I love the people. I know there's work has to be done, and there's a balance there that I have to be mindful of, because some of the stories are heart-wrenching. Some of the stories are, touching, and but I have to help, facilitate and guide them through the challenge, and involves some coaching, but also involves, the spiritual element, where I might put a spirit plate out and ask the Creator, ask the spirits to help this person, guide them, get them to where they need to be. I think I've been really blessed in that way, because of my my own personal struggles throughout my life, and then reconnecting to that culture and the knowledge and that those ceremonies. I believe strongly that I'm very close and connected, to the higher power. So I think that's really what's helpful for me, is knowing I believe in that. And so, land interests, we talk about, Mashkeke, Nagawe, and how beautiful our medicine earth mother provides everything that we need. Yes, that's true. But we have to, that's what we have to keep in mind, is that we need to work together and make the world a better place, and bring more peace into the world through us as leaders, as mediators. We have a big responsibility to do it. That's why I'm doing this work. So it's important.
Absolutely. And when you said that, of course, your business took off, and of course, whatever you did, but it's I think the spirituality that you bring in, and I think that symposium, the Heart Soul Spirituality Symposium, you must watch those sessions, because all the discussions that you'll connect with that, and that's an important part. I mean, when you connect to that spirituality, things around you definitely change. I mean, and we have to bring that out. That's because we can't have a sterile concept of mediation. There is so much more that goes in the energy, which I'm saying you should watch those sessions, all these discussions that we have had. I think you'll really connect to it. And these words we have to move out of the neutral, independent words. We have to find
Yeah.
some other words to describe mediators and their traits. We have to go out from this confine that has happened on that for sure. So that you're
Yeah,
going to have.
I could never be 100% impartial. And I've talked to the funny thing is too. Also, when I work in some First Nation communities here, the language itself is a little foreign, and that because I grew up away from the community and don't speak the language. But when I go into First Nation communities, I do training. In one particular case, there was a group of elderly women laughing. I said, "What is so funny?" And they said, "Part of my spiel, my training is that we shred I shred all my documents at the end of our the session, and we're I won't be able to subpoena. You won't be able to subpoena my notes, without prejudice." And so they couldn't. There was no word in the language to say I'm going to shred the documents. And the woman said the closest that we could come to was meat grinder, which everyone can, I think, get a visual of what a meat grinder is. And so it was really profound. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? The English language doesn't really capture a lot of what our Indigenous people, the language is, there's so much in the language. It's certainly different from the English. But I'm able to communicate. There's different ways of communicating. I think we're genuine and we're open, we're honest, and we acknowledge that. I always say, oh, you know what? I don't speak the language. I grew up away from the community, but I love my people. I love community, and I'm making my way back. So please indulge me. And out of respect, I just have to be upfront with that. And so yeah, certainly, the language is sometimes a barrier in some ways. But again, that's the Western approach, where they're more about coming to some agreements. Where in our community, in our culture, it's about understanding, it's about learning, it's about growth. Conflict resolution is about growing. It's about all the little teachings that we get, are about personal growth and development and becoming. They talk about this journey of becoming, the journey of healing. The journey really is about becoming the best you can possibly be. I'm not going to be perfect. I mean, I'm pretty close. Just kidding.
You
But it's really about that, becoming the best person you can possibly be, and be better at handling conflict and not being afraid of that. And, navigating your way through these challenges in our lives. So it's just been a great honor for me to work with First Nations, work with my community, and bring some of that new contemporary problem-solving approaches. But also, I incorporate our Indigenous culture and ceremony. And that's the big difference between me and what a lot of the other mediators in mainstream society do here in Canada. I'm able to incorporate those things. I'm honored. I'm blessed to do.
But you also have to bring us some words from there, words to describe a mediator. Please, if is there something available in your language to describe a mediator? Of course, we're moving away from neutral and those words. What are the words we are getting in? We're moving away, but we have to still get something. So from your language, can we get something?
I can't give you anything. I can't, but I can tell you, there is an Aboriginal legal organization, and they have a description on their website, and it comes down to those people who are seeking justice. That's the one that comes to my mind in English. But I think as I'm learning, and this is another area that I have had pursued to get a definition of what mediation, from an indigenous language, how that would be described. So that's something that I'm going to do. I'm glad you brought it up. It's just another thing on my table, on my plate that I gotta incorporate. So
I'm telling you, the words that I am looking at, and I've already told you, heart, soul, spirituality, connecting to these elements. I am looking at that being important from the mediator's perspective. Humanistic approach, and of course, I mean, connecting to a person and to the human side of the person, being humane, whatever words we want to use there. Values. I think values is something which definitely values based process or person or thoughts. And I think I mean, I don't know, of course, we'll have to develop these aspects and discuss this more and how people are already bringing it in. And the fact that you bring in your humility. I mean, humility seems to be one a concept that has come through as a common thread. And I've had discussions with a lot of people on that. They brought that up, the humility aspect of it. So all those things we need to bring out first and then put those across as what goes into that person being a mediator. Because on the other side, I keep criticizing these 40-hour factories, and I keep saying that, look, these are things which don't seem to be discussed. I mean, these are such important aspects, and I hear people say, we'll make a mediator. Please don't demean mediators by saying you'll make a mediator in 40 hours. Please don't do that. I mean, I really find that really sad, and I'm fighting against it. I'm fighting against it. You'll hear me so many of my sessions. This will come up because I'm really, I feel really sad that people can actually say that. I mean, there's so much that goes into that person. Just the fact that, like, you connecting to your spirituality, I mean, just that aspect of it is so personal, and that's a personal connection. To say I can do it in 40 hours to someone, it's like, I mean, I think I don't really don't think that's the right thing to tell people. It's misleading people. That's the way I look at it. I don't know whether how you would agree with me or not. I'm maybe a little controversial when I talk about these things, but you'll hear
I
these
think
things.
for me, it's taken a long time to do what I do and to live in that, you know, live the life that I'm living now. And again, how I came to be a indigenous mediator was through a ceremony. And I asked the creator, I said, where can I go? And what can I do now in my 30s? And, this is the way I was shown. And I kept following that and I pursued it and I kept learning and growing and taking courses and, just figuring out how I can be the best I can possibly be as a mediator, but also not to lose sight of my culture, but to incorporate that into the work I do. So, it really is. I'm so happy that I was part of a training. I think I mentioned earlier in the symposium that, when I work with the indigenous people in the north there, they have their circle processes. They've been doing that for hundreds of years, and it's alive and well. And you should see how they do their dispute resolution processes. They have water, spirit of the water is there. They have these beautiful copper pots. They have the medicines. They have the tobacco, and we sit in a circle and we dialogue, and it's really something to see. And everyone, people have to listen, and it's out of respect that when they open a circle, you bring in the ancestors, and you open it in a good way, in a safe and a ceremonial way, and you have your water there, you have your medicines, and then you have your dialogue, and you have to close the circle in a ceremonial way too, usually with an elder, but not always. But once you close the circle, we'll all go home with something. We'll all go home with something. So it's always good to have, your medicines there to smudge and to cleanse yourself. We'll all go home with something. Could be a learning, could be, resolution, could be, could be a new teaching. There's tremendous benefits from the work that we do, and I think it can have a huge impact on what's going to happen in this country in the decades to come if we can build on Indigenous dispute resolution and incorporate that into a sort of national strategy to make sure that our, the high rates of recidivism, high rates of incarceration in our country with Indigenous people, and more than ever with 50% of women, Indigenous women in this country are, the Indigenous or the women incarcerated, 50% are Indigenous people, Indigenous women in particular. So it's really shocking, but we have to change the system, and the Indigenous people have the ability to do that. And but we have to, convince convince the governments otherwise, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
No, I think, David, I think it's not about, we won't look at the governments. Let's just start at the grassroots. Like I said about these mediation circles that I'm talking about, I think every community, every school, let's put this together, talk about these methods, and let that awareness come from there. Because I'm saying that fighting against the system, because again, this is colonization. The colonizer has given these structures and the conditioning of the mind over hundreds of years. You will be banging your head against a brick wall. Okay, that's the way I'm looking at it. Let's go down. There is, look, it won't happen in a day or two or in a year. It'll take some time, but let's start creating that foundation. That's what I'm doing. I'm saying let's go down there, because I've understood from my side how things are happening in every part, and I know what is required. I mean, that's my thought, and I will stick to my thought. And I'm bringing in all elements. I'm bringing in all thought processes. I want to bring in, and what you are bringing in, all these discussions that we are having, let's take from there and let's create that foundation there. And I'm saying that the change, we'll see a change when we see the children talking about it, because there is conditioning happening very early in life, even in the children. This whole colonizers mindset in children, looking at authority figures in a certain manner, wanting an authority figure to make decisions for you, all those things, they actually pick up very fast. So we have to catch them really young before these influences get to them, because they're part of a society where that aspect is just getting carried on, because like you said,
Yeah,
mainstream, that's what mainstream is. And to be able to actually change it, it's not going to be easy, but we'll get like-minded people together. I'm saying things will happen. that's
absolutely,
that's my thought.
absolutely.
But only thing, David, one before, I don't know how much time you have, but before you go, you have to tell me, how is the next generation looking at it from your nation? How are they looking at the whole thing in terms of dispute resolution and looking at the traditional methods?
Yeah, I just want to just to give you an example, I try to encourage youth. I get some training opportunities. I always ask the youth if there's a youth in the community that would like to come out, just participate and be a part of this learning. And so, I think for the most part, our young people are the fastest growing demographic in the country, are brilliant, are strong, and they so open to to learning and to knowing about the culture and the importance of the significance of that. But also, I think that's where we have an opportunity to teach more young people about conflict resolution and mediation, different circle processes, and how spirituality is such a significant part of that healing journey, to become the best you can be. So I'm there's a huge opportunity there, and I don't think that we're really touching as many Indigenous youth as we could be. And I think it needs to happen now more than ever, and to have the tools out there, the knowledge out there for young people to just to look at as an opportunity to maybe to grow personally, professionally, but also maybe do some good work in the community. I don't know a lot of Indigenous mediators that actually this is my business. This is the work that I do. But, there's opportunity there to be a part of something that maybe you never thought you could do. And so our young people need to be, I think, there's lots of opportunity for them to maybe delve into some of this dispute resolution, or original dispute resolution, and say, hey, maybe there's some opportunity here. Maybe I can have my own business. Maybe I can be an arbitrator. Maybe I can be an adjudicator. You know what I mean? Like, so when I did my first adjudication, one of the only ones I did, was I had our eagle feather, and I swore, instead of swearing on the Bible, they held our eagle feather, and we talked about truth. And the language of the heart is the truth. That's what we teach people. So we're going to hold up that eagle feather. That's the significant tool that we use. Use it for prayer. We use it for ceremony. But we can also use it in dispute resolution. And say, look, I'm going to hold this feather here, and I want to, can you just make sure you're open and honest and truthful with us in this discussion today? Very simply done. And people will, I think they gravitate towards that more than, sort of other Western modalities of, dispute resolution. So yeah, again, I think getting back to where I wanted to, there's opportunity for youth, and you have to get them, trained and
And let's get their
exposed.
thoughts. Yeah, let's get their thoughts. Let's get their thoughts. Let's just understand from them how they are looking at it. And whatever they've been influenced by, can we undo certain parts if they've already got influenced? But
Yeah,
I think I'm saying it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a cakewalk. But we have to put the foundation together, because I just feel that this whole, you call it training, I actually don't like to use the word training. I say there is a certain inborn aspect of people. It's a skill that is there. We have to develop that skill. So I call it skill development. So let's put together a skill development kind of a program where we take from these, whatever, from every culture, because we'll be discussing from people from all over, and let's pick up all the best parts of how people go about it, and let's put it all together, and let's take it as a package. Because what happens is that it seems to be something that, okay, we are picking this part, we are picking up from there. It doesn't seem to be a structure there. Let's put it into a structure, because people understand structure. Because up till now, there are about more than 400 videos on my YouTube channel from people from all over the world. But I tried to let people come out and talk about whatever they wanted to. But now let's put together a full skill development program, taking from indigenous cultures, this original dispute resolution, let's call it that, and let's take it forward. So you have to be part of that, David. I'm sure you're a very busy person, but you have to do this for the larger good. You have to.
absolutely. If I can just, in closing, because I need to get going, but I wanted to share the significance of water. It's always good to have water at the table in your negotiation or mediation, dispute resolution. And the reason why is the spirit of the water is alive, well, and how I know that is, I drowned in a public swimming pool years ago as an 8-year-old. And I remember seeing this silver flash in my short life at the time in front of my eyes. And in an instant, I was up on the side of the pool spitting out water. And I was 8 years old, I remember. And about 40 years later, I went to the healer and I said, what happened there? Was it my guide, the otter? Or was it the snapping turtle, my spirit helper, that got me out of that pool? Because I was pretty far down under. I could see the side of the pool. And there was no way I could have made it. And so he smoked his pipe and he did his ceremony. He came back and said, nope, it wasn't none of your helpers. It was the spirit of the water pushed you up just enough. And that's how I lived. That's how I lived. And he said, it didn't only happen once, did it, Dave? And I had to think. I said, no, you're right. I was in a very horrible car accident down the highway, and I ended up in a swamp, and I could have passed then, but I didn't. And so I've been, spirit of the waters. I'm very close to the water. I have a close connection to the spirit of the water. I always talk of the water, never waste it, never take it for granted. And so he also shared with me, said, Dave, so when the spirit of the water sleeps, what happens, you think? And I said, I don't know. He said, an ice age. So that's what happens when the spirit of the water sleeps. The spirit of the water is significant for all of us on the planet. Let's take care of the water. Water will take care of us. And make sure that's part of the dispute resolution. Always have some water there. It's always helpful. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. And the spirit of the water has done all that because you are out here to do the larger good. So you have to look at that and work with me on that. Thank you.
Always thankful.
Thank you very much. And tomorrow we have the closing session at 7 o'clock India time. Please drop in, whatever, even for some time. Yep.
Miigwech. That means thank you in my language. Miigwech.
All right. See you then. Thank you very much.